CBDC, Control Built on Chaos. This is a brief outline of the agenda as I see it unfolding now, and to where it will go in the near-term future. Stick to the end of the video, as I will be showcasing a 2010 Project Avalon video that details the Anglo-Saxon mission, or so it is called within the video, and it outlines exactly as to where I theorise this agenda will go. As for my short absence, I have been in the midst of writing my new book, and that has taken a great deal of my time. I will be making a video every 2 weeks now, until the release of my next book. After this second book release, I have another book that I shall title Principia Mimetica, which will go into depth on the Cabal's methodologies for manipulating society and the group, and how we can best utilise these for our own long-term survival. I apologise for my slowness in uploading videos, but these book ideas are like thorns in my mind. I must write them. Initial response from another: do you reckon there will be an economic crash? My response: it is a certainty there will be a recession by the fall. That is what the major institutions seem to be sounding, or at least it will become widely reported on. Recessions are typically 2 consecutive quarters of low growth. Thus, there is some latency between the recessionary effects and the official sounding of a recession. We had a recession last year as well, though there was no recessionary effects due to the general circumstances and the media failing to report about it within a framework of fear. Although, I suspect this one will develop into a crack-up boom, or a full economic and monetary collapse, spurred on by or justified by the changing geopolitical landscape and the chronic undersupply of the logistical system, all caused by the need to defend freedom and democracy over in Ukraine because, quote, what we are going through pales in comparison to their plight, unquote. Of course. However, the central bank digital currency mechanism that will centralise all resources and the distribution thereof by the propelling of said medium of surveilled exchange, which can only be brought in via those said cataclysmic economic and monetary conditions. That, in itself, can only be brought in via the perception of a global conflict, sanctions, and a general breakdown of the supply chain. This plan is entirely sequential, and each composite part is contingent upon the success of the previous stage. Hence why I suspect there is no official timescale, and the dates they give are only advisory, and what is desired rather than planned.
Changes which will happen. However, we do know that global energy systems, food systems and supply chains will be deeply affected.
We're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new accounting is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having an almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. In my opinion, we're going to need a digital constitution of human rights if we're going to have digital money.
And the title of this session: are we ready for a new world order?
After the CBDC has been implemented and society stabilised, then they will unveil the, quote, doctrine of perpetual war, unquote, and this will further reinforce the need for the radical overhaul of society from the ground up. More crises will come forth from this, as crisis is required to sustain and maintain social control, without fear that ultimately derives from instability within the mass perception, which comes forth from the abyss of the unknown, of course. Then there can be no state. It is all about mitigating competition and ensuring predictability within the societal organism, or soon-to-be societal organism, the hive mind. Hence all of this, of what we perceive as madness. The longer this goes on, the clearer the picture is becoming. It is akin to a fast-moving object, drawn nearer and nearer to oneself. The nearer the object approaches, the more detail one can pick out and the better one can identify the object and the approximate time of approach based on the current velocity of said object. Hence, this is what I am seeing with the wide array of information up to this point. As we are seeing right now within China, there is a locking down of the populace due to their zero medical hobgoblin policy, of which is propelling deaths forward by the fact that food shortages are becoming rife, and the locking down is now set to be indefinite in scope. Naturally, this is all designed to provide the illusion, very real illusion, if such a thing could be said, of death and despair that will be blamed upon the doing of that said medical hobgoblin. This may lead into a resurgence of that dreaded contagion somewhere down the line, or the perception of it, of course. However, what is a more pressing matter from this is that Shanghai is China's industrial centre, and that the 26 million individuals locked down there causes serious issues for not just the West and the US, but for the entirety of the global economy. Consumer inflation and the knock-on effects of a low production output being the most blatant. Shanghai was chosen to be locked down and starved to death, indefinitely, for this reason solely. As we will see within the video from 2010, I will include, directly here or as a link in the description, that according to the Anglo-Saxon mission, there will be contagions and the threat of contagions emanating from China, along with military conflict with China and its allies that will result in World War III. From these events and, as the video states, from a limited and catalysing thermonuclear exchange, there will then come forth the perfect conditions to radically reshape and centralise the resources and distribution thereof, globally. Naturally, we know this is the blockchain and the central bank digital currency, but in 2010, such terms and thinking was in its nascence. Thus, we must recall that this does not have to be entirely based in reality. That being, it does not have to be real. No, but it has to be perceived as real. And like all of these other crises, perception takes precedence over evidential fact. As long as the group tout it as truth and believe as such, then the masses will follow suit and believe likewise. It is akin to a child being scared of shadows, or the dark, or the monster under their bed. Of course, they know deep down inside there's no facts for this. There's only the perception within their mind that there is a monster under the bed, that evil spirits lurk within the dark. Thus, they believe it to be the case, and will do so until they lose that fear of the dark, of the shadows, of the said fictitious invisible monsters. This is why we see an enhancement of these narratives of doom. That is, the familiarization of these aforementioned topics and common fictitious societal plays that we see developing at present. The EU stockpiling of radiochemical and nuclear countermeasure tools and drugs, such as iodine, along with the slow and methodical unravelling of the economies of the West through the utterly insane sanctions on Russia. This now culminating with a ban on coal and wood imports from Russia into the EU, beginning shortly. Couple that with the already high inflation and weakening structure and prestige of the dollar, and we should all be able to see the writing on the wall. For most, they see the disintegration of the West and the viewed in real-time suicide of the US. But it is beyond that. That is merely the superficial, surface view of this all. It goes far beyond that, and the ineptitude of the political class is but a smokescreen, a camouflage, to which the cabal and the true agenda may hide behind, whilst they utilise these entirely insane political developments for the fulfilment of an age-old plan of dominion. Everything from eating bugs to UFO disclosure, all is designed to put us into a state of confusion, into a tailspin to which we are more malleable, into which induces a sort of collective Stockholm syndrome within us all. We are witnessing history, and history that has been a millennium in the making. Onto a brave new world we set sail, with much tribulation and trepidation, ready to meet us at every turn. We must not only prepare ourselves with provisions for this journey, but to be mentally and spiritually ready to face the unknown with tremendous courage and determination. If one has not already, then I would strongly advise to ensure you have provisions in place. Food, a crop garden or allotment, livestock if possible, alternative energy generation means, and defensible implements. To put these provisions in place at once, as we are at the crossroads of a rather extreme change in recorded history, and it would be prudent and in one's interests to see that the basic necessities are satisfied. Just my personal advice, but apart from that, it will ensure that you keep your bills down and take the first steps into self-sufficiency as best as can be expected in this system.